Motion by Ms. Gillespie, second by Mr. Boozemel. Any discussion?
Yes.
Seeing some.
I
Go
have
ahead.
discussion. Okay. So, first off, the actions on this agenda for tonight, this is not an emergency. This was not an emergency. We did not need to have scheduled last night and tonight this meeting. And I would ask that in the future, Mr. Twigg, that unless there is an emergency need for a meeting on a Friday, that we not schedule meetings on Fridays, and especially, again, not until after 5 o'clock, out of courtesy for the public and our educator staff, because there is no way that we should be having meetings when we have staff that are just finishing out the school day, parents that haven't gotten their kids yet from school, and if they want to be able to participate, they cannot. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, on this agenda, we are intended to be discussing a contract for a superintendent. And I actually would like to read a couple of things in regards to what we're supposed to be addressing in closed meeting tonight, and then make a motion in regards to this agenda, a substitute motion. So first, Mr. Twigg, you received a letter last night that indicates that I will be appealing the VBOE's decision to license Mr. Taylor under the code 2.24026 and 2.24027 of the Code of Virginia by filing suit in the circuit court. Having watched from my attorney, having watched the meeting and reviewed the materials provided to my attorney, he is requesting the school board defer its decision until the conclusion of all litigation. That's first. Next, today, I received, actually all board members received this letter from one of Mark Taylor's children, and I would like to read it to
Point of order, that's
you.
personal, it's a personal
No,
email.
it was sent to.
It's personal matter.
Point
of order.
Okay,
Point of
is
information.
recognized.
Excuse me,
It's-
point of information, I have the floor. It is not a point of order.
Yes.
It's not a point of order.
We're
Excuse me,
determining-
Ms. Phelps and Mr. Twigg.
We're
Okay.
determining.
This email was not sent to us confidentially first, and it was sent to every single one of us.
It is a personal
and we
family
need-
matter
This is,
that you're
it is
about
not
to
a
read.
personal family matter.
Well,
It
look,
was sent-
hey.
Listen,
the
I
chair
have
has
the floor,
The
and
chair
I
is-
have the floor,
the chair
Mr.
is
No, I
taking
have
the
not
floor if you
seceded the
wanna
floor.
declare
I have
having it.
discussion.
The chair
and
has the floor.
Listen, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Twigg,
I
you do
have
not
the
have
floor.
the floor.
In
You
light
gave it,
of
now you know.
the purpose of
I have the floor.
determining an agenda.
Miss
I'm gonna
Phelps is
call a
out of
question.
order.
I'm gonna call a
Ms.
question.
Phelps, so
I'm gonna
see-
call a question.
No, Ms.
I'm gonna
Phelps is
call
out
to
of order.
question.
No, I have a
Call
substitute
to
The
motion.
question's been called.
I have a
The
substitute
question has been
motion.
called.
It requires
No.
two-thirds vote
You're
to
wrong.
It
cancel
does
the
not
debate.
require.
I'm sorry, yes,
I'm
it does.
going to call a
I
vote.
motion to
It
recess.
does. Mr.
I-
Chairman, can you
I
please?
move to call a vote
meeting.
of no confidence.
to
I'm
question.
Mr. Chairman,
I move.
please
You have
take
two
the
motions to
meeting.
recess. Call to question, that's what I'd like to
No.
do.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman,
you.
Cannot call the question when I am in this, when we're still in discussion.
We're back into
I can call a
the.
question.
Okay,
No, you
we'll
cannot.
keep your
Cannot call the-
discussion
You-
focused
we
toward
have to have
the
a 2/3
agenda.
vote to end discussion then. And I
Keep your
have the floor.
discussion.
And you cannot cut
Mr.
me
Chairman,
off.
please let her speak.
I will give you back the floor, excuse me.
Motion
But
to
in
recess.
the meantime, keep your points targeted toward the agenda. A
Yes, it
letter from
is. It
somebody,
absolutely is.
This
This
not
is
correlate with
targeted
the
towards the
agenda.
agenda. This is targeted
Mr.
towards the
Chairman.
agenda because
Point of order.
the public, and I don't know if you guys have read it, So we need to know information that will inform what we have on the agenda today. And it will also explain the substitute motion that I am going to make after I read the letter. And I have every right to read this letter. It is not confidential. It was sent to every member on the board, and every member on the board needs to have this information. And it is foiable. So, Mr. Abuzmal, I will answer your question after I finish my discussion.
I'm
Thank
going
you.
to call the question
So,
still. I'm going
Good
to
afternoon, members of the school
board
board.
to call
I
to
understand,
question.
Ms.
I'm gonna
Phelps,
call to
you are
question.
out of order.
I'm gonna call to
Mr.
question.
Twigg,
I'd
you
like
need
to-
you need to tell her that she needs to stop making comments. She is out of order. I
Ms.
understand
Baller,
that
hold-
you are in the,
Hold on, hold
Mr.
on.
Twigg.
Before we move further, Ms. Baller, give us some semblance of interpretation on
It's
the,
still
Interpretation of
vote.
what?
on the
It's
call
still
to
a
the
two-thirds.
question.
Mr. Chairman, it's still
Just to-
two-thirds vote to close the
Point
debate
of
out.
information I'd like for the secretary.
I can help her find it.
If you just let me read, then we can continue.
All right, go ahead and proceed while she's looking that up.
Thank you. This is from one of Mark Taylor's children. Good afternoon, members of the school board. I understand you are in the midst of negotiations to appoint Mark Taylor as superintendent of schools for Spotsylvania County. I feel that you should be fully informed in making this decision, so I have some information I would like to share with you. I am the youngest of Mark Taylor's 3 children, and I was homeschooled by Mark and Fran until my junior and part of my senior year of high school. It should also be noted that I have not been in communication with either of my parents for almost 2 years, since my older brother told them that I was bisexual without my permission, and they reacted by becoming increasingly verbally aggressive over a period that spanned several months. Mark Taylor is beyond underqualified for this position. I believe he would be detrimental to the well-being of future students. As a homeschooler, I did not receive any kind of proper education until approximately the 9th grade. Most of my younger school years were spent alone in an upstairs room of the cafe my parents opened. Here I was instructed to essentially teach myself out of a
personal
math workbook
Yeah,
and repeat
just let
3
it go.
educational computer games designed
her
for
continue. They
2nd
wrote the letter
to
for
5th
her,
graders. I was not allowed to learn about evolution. Instead, I was
So-
instructed to read and discuss the creation story from Genesis. I did not take a history course. Instead, I participated in an 18th century
It's
first-person
all right, April.
interpretation group
That's
called
all right.
George Washington's Young
That's okay.
Friends.
That's okay.
Ms. Cole has the floor.
A group that has appeared in at least 1 or 2 freelance star articles. My education was severely lacking and entirely centered
So,
around evangelical
It's okay.
Christianity.
It's okay, Kurt.
As
Let
for
her-
Mr.
let her
Taylor's
be.
Facebook posts,
let her be.
I can vouch that they align with my father and
just
my
record
mother's
it, that's all.
beliefs. I can say that both Mr. and Miss Taylor are transphobic and homophobic, and I have known them to be casually, carelessly, and almost unintentionally racist. I read that there was some insinuation that these posts were somehow fake. While I can't confirm or deny that myself, I can assure you and concerned parents
disgusting
that this
that
is
they're
completely in
using
line
his
with who my
children.
father is as a
It's just
person.
disgusting that they're
When I
using
was
his
still living
children.
with them, I
It's
heard
just
my father and mother
totally disgusting.
repeatedly
They're using
make
his
jokes about
children.
trans
It
people,
is just totally
especially
disgusting.
in
It's
those
just out of
media,
control.
especially
Totally
those in media and sports.
disgusting.
Black Lives
using
Matter
children-
and members of the
Using
LGBTQ.
children like this. It's disgusting.
Please, can you
It's
turn
just
off Ms.
disgusting.
Phelps' mic?
Ms. Cole,
because she is
please
out of-
finish
she
your
is out.
comments.
Mr. Twigg,
Phelps,
point
Pursue
of,
your
point of
comments.
order.
Why don't you tell her
I have a
to
point
stop?
of order, Mr. Twigg.
It's
I
disgusting.
have a point of order.
Well, after
No,
done
Mr.
with
Twigg,
her,
so
This
so
is a point
reading
of order.
There you go.
Sexually explicit, allegedly sexually explicit materials is okay, but me reading this email is not okay?
Please
No,
finish.
it's not
Okay,
that.
I
It's
will
disgusting that you're
continue.
using
Ms. Phelps,
people's
please stop.
children.
Ms.
That's
Phelps,
what's
Point of
disgusting.
I
order,
asked you
Mr.
nicely, please
Twig.
stop.
It's
In
Point
any
of
disgusting.
order.
when I was still living with
It's
them, I heard my
disgusting
mother.
You're using children.
Ms. Cole, would you
It
stop
is
for just a second,
absolutely
please?
disgusting.
Point of order, Mr. Twig. Mr. Twig, when
It's
one
disgusting.
one
Cole,
of your
you gonna
friends
finish?
is
It's
interrupting,
disgusting.
I will if you tell
you
Ms.
need
Phelps
to
stop
stop
talking.
Ms. Phelps. She
Shame
needs to be
on you.
gavelled.
Shame
She
on
needs
you
to
for
be
Shame
using
on you,
gavelled.
Ms.
children.
Phelps, for wanting to
Shame-
hire someone
shame
who
on
is
you.
not
It's disgusting.
appropriate for our
It's
school
disgusting.
system. Shame
It's
on you.
disgusting.
Shame on you.
Shame
Ms.
Shame
on
on you
you.
for
You
wanting
are-
to
Mr. Chairman,
excuse
can
his
you
behavior
Shame,
and have
shame,
him lead our
shame.
school division.
So shame
on
you.
you.
You're using children.
Shame on
It's
you
just
for
disgusting.
wanting to hire this person
Disgusting.
for our school system. I hope, Mr.
Disgusting.
Boozmal, that you are
Using
listening. I
children.
hope, Ms. Gillespie, if you
Using
care about children
children.
in our school system,
like to call
that
for
you
a
are
privileged
listening.
motion of
And I,
recess.
no, we can call a recess. I'll come back and continue
That's
reading.
fine.
I'll
Motion
second.
to recess, here a second. And, we need a vote. We need a vote on the recess, please, sir. Never mind, thank you, sir. We're in recess for 5 minutes. Recess.
Motion to return from recess.
Ms. Phelps.
I second.
And Dr. Daniels, so we're back into, I don't think we have to vote, do we? Back in session. So, okay, Ms. Cole, would you kindly finish your excerpt, and then we will vote.
Okay, so when we left, I was reading an email from Mark Taylor's daughter. It says, and I did verify that this is his child, so good afternoon, members of the school board. I understand that you are in the midst of negotiations to appoint Mark Taylor as superintendent of schools for Spotsylvania County. I feel that you should be fully informed in making this decision, so I have some information I would like to share with you. I am the youngest of Mark Taylor's 3 children, and I was homeschooled by Mark and Fran until my junior and part of my senior year of high school. It should also be noted that I have not been in communication with either of my parents for almost 2 years, since my older brother told them I was bisexual without my permission, and they reacted by becoming increasingly verbally aggressive over a period that spanned several months. Mark Taylor is beyond underqualified for this position. I believe he would be detrimental to the well-being of future students. As a homeschooler, I did not receive any kind of proper education until approximately 9th grade. Most of my younger school years were spent alone in the upstairs room of the cafe my parents opened. Here I was instructed to essentially teach myself out of a math workbook and repeat 3 educational computer games designed for 2nd to 5th graders. I was not allowed to learn about evolution. Instead, I was instructed to read and discuss the creation story from Genesis. I did not take a history course. Instead, I participated in an 18th century first-person interpretation group called George Washington's Young Friends, a group that has appeared in at least 1 or 2 freelance star articles. My education was severely lacking and entirely centered around evangelical Christianity. As for Mr. Taylor's Facebook post, I can vouch that they align with my father and my mother's beliefs. I can say that both Mr. and Mrs. Taylor are transphobic and homophobic, and I have known them to be casually, carelessly, and almost unintentionally racist. I read that there was some insinuation that these posts were somehow fake. While I can't confirm or deny that myself, I can assure you that the concerned parent and the concerned parents, that this is completely in line with who my father is as a person. When I was still living with them, I heard my father and mother repeatedly make jokes about trans people, especially those in media and sports, Black Lives Matter, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. I was not surprised at all when I read the article concerning Mr. Taylor's Facebook, and I would urge parents in this school district to be even more concerned than they are. They should consider the fact that this is just what Mr. Taylor was willing to post publicly. This was Mr. Taylor being tasteful. It is also worth mentioning that Fran Taylor is way more involved in all of this than it appears. I was living with my parents when Kirk Twigg was first running for school board, and I was made to work multiple events in contribution with his campaign. Fran Taylor is the one who really pushed and encouraged Mr. Twigg to run. She is the one who truly spearheaded his campaign. I was there for multiple phone calls where both of my parents would instruct Mr. Twigg on what to say or what statement to put out. They are far more entangled than either the Twiggs or the Taylors have let on. Kurt Twigg election is also around the first time that my mother mentioned wanting my father to be superintendent of schools. Unfortunately, I do not have written documentation, but I do recall my mother promising my father that if he got appointed, she would be there to help him and, in fact, would do most of the work. I think people deserve to know that if Mark Taylor is their superintendent, they are actually getting Fran Taylor as well. My mother has been deeply invested in local politics throughout my childhood, and I'm certain is still heavily involved behind the scenes. I truly believe that Mr. Taylor has absolutely no business being a school superintendent and has no experience in education whatsoever. I do think that the Taylors have a personal, religious, and political agenda. I think it's concerning that Mr. Taylor, who was openly against public schooling and refused to participate in any public school for the vast majority of their children's education, should now be appointed to such a position. I strongly believe that the fact he was even considered as a candidate is just because of my mother's friends and influence in local government. I understand if you choose to do nothing with this information and make Mr. Taylor superintendent anyway. However, as someone whose education was discounted and ignored due to Mr. Taylor's actions and lack of knowledge regarding education, I feel compelled to share all of the information I can with you so that you can ultimately make an informed decision about what will be best for the district and the students. Thank you for your time, and it's signed by her.
Thank you.
Because of this letter, I move that we adjourn this meeting so that the board members can consider this decision and come back at another date to discuss the superintendent search again.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, a second. We have a second. Discussion, vote.
There's no discussion on the adjournment motion.
Okay. So the motion is, or substitute motion is to adjourn. Motion on the floor is to adjourn. Yes or no? Do I have the question correct? There was a motion on the floor to adjourn. Do we hear you right, Ms. Cole?
As a matter of procedure, I thought, just purely procedurally, I thought that there was a motion on the floor to approve the agenda.
There already is, so it'd have to be a substitute.
I would think you need to go to that necessarily, that motion for the other one. I'm just procedurally speaking,
He's not the school board's attorney.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, that motion fails 3-4, so we'll stay in the session. Now, we'll vote to, on the original motion to adopt the agenda.
Then I have discussion, Mr. Twig.
Yes, we have a motion and a second to vote. Make it quick, please.
Excuse me, sir. I will take as much time as it takes.
I don't have to entertain any discussion
So,
at this point, so please,
Robert's
cooperate.
Rules of Order, you
You have to
do.
entertain discussion.
So, my concern
Disagree.
is twofold. Number one, as I mentioned yesterday, we have an attorney who is representing trying to represent the board. That is not the school board attorney.
That is
Mr.
not
excuse
true.
me,
What else
Mr.
would you like to
Do not
say?
interrupt me, Mr. Twig.
Well,
I
keep the
have
facts
the
straight.
floor. So, Mr. Twig unilaterally chose and signed whatever, if I guess, for this person, no offense to him, except he's not a school lawyer. He doesn't know school law. But Mr. Twig, unilaterally, without the authority of the board, and I will remind people again, That is why they had to come back and re-vote, or not re-vote, because they never voted the first time, for Mark Taylor, because Mr. Twig, again, unilaterally decided to send a letter to the Board of Education, and it got returned, and they had to do it. This, Mr. Twig, is unilaterally picking an attorney without the vote of the board. Mr. Twig is not the school board. Everything Ms. Gillespie read yesterday was about the board. The board, it's a collective board. We are one body with 7 votes. Mr. Twig did not get a vote for this person to be our counsel. And to top it off, this person has no school law. No offense to him, I'm sure he's got an amazing law firm, but they have no school law. Secondly, so I have a question before we go into closed meeting for the attorney. So they're going to be talking about a contract. And it's entitled Superintendent Search. And I'm going to pull it up in my phone for the motion, because the motion was, and as it was read, sorry. The motion was resolved that the board conduct a closed meeting for the following purposes: discussion, consideration of interviews or prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, employees, or employees of the public body. Prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific officers, appointees, employees of a public body as permitted by 2.23711A1 of the Code of Virginia. I don't think that's the correct motion. I don't think, first of all, I don't think it's a complete motion, and I don't think it is the correct motion. It's the correct code. 2.23711A1 may be the correct code, but I don't believe this is the correct motion. Do you have something that would be better for us to go into closed session so we're not going in illegally like they did last night?
In effect, you're not supposed to be asking that question, but also,
I can't ask,
that
oh, that's right,
question
he's
has
not
been-
my legal counsel. You're right, I'm not supposed to, so I take it
no,
back.
that's the chair's obligation, FYI.
Oh, no, that's because he's your legal counsel. He's not the school board's legal counsel, Mr.
I'll cover that
Twig.
in a moment. But, okay, having said that, let's get the screen up, please, to vote to accept the agenda. Thank you, sir. Are we accepting the agenda in its present form? Mr. Boozman, Ms. Cole. Uh, 4-3, we are accepting the agenda in its present form. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Boozman. Sorry, he's looking at the wrong one. Go ahead, Ms. Dan. Thank you. Now, two things. Next, we'll invoke that 10-minute rule on subjects again this evening to help us get through this in the event that everybody has something to say. Second thing,
Mr.
our
Chairman,
legal
point of information.
our
Point of
legal
information.
counsel.
Mr. Chairman, you're supposed to stop talking when there's a point of information on the floor. So what do you mean by 10-minute rule?
10 minutes per topic.
Well, Robert's rule, again, is,
Well, just be respectful and act intelligent about it, and it's a non-issue. Just it's per issue. Thank you.
thank you.
Is that it? Okay. The second thing is, our legal counsel was hired yesterday afternoon, and that was initiated through our procurement process within our financial department. Reason is he was hired for a 5,000 or under rate and a time limit which has to be short in accordance with those rules, which will not exceed 1 month at this time. So in that regard, we have had an attorney. We have one tonight that will be assisting us in our session and with the contract. Having said that,
Point of
we'd
information,
like
Mr. Twig?
Yes.
Why would you hire an attorney for a school division that does not have any school law experience?
The attorney we hired was available to help us with needs that are imminent. So, there you go.
Mr. Twig, our eminent needs have to do with discipline matters or Title IX or Title VI. This gentleman, my guess is, would not know what those were.
Okay, well, thank you for your point of
Well,
information.
Mr. Twig, I'm asking you a question. You brought him up, you brought it up, you said why you hired him before eminent purposes, so that could include discipline, Title IX, Title VI. Do you even know what those are, Mr. Twig?
Mr. Twig, I have a question, if I may
I
ask
have the
you to
floor,
ask
Ms. Gillespie. I asked Mr. Twig a question, not you.
Okay,
And I'm
with
asking for
regard
an
to
answer,
that, do you have a
Mr.
comment
Twig,
before
I'm
I
asking for an answer.
I think she has
I
a
wanted to see
response
if you
here.
could address the attorney and ask this question for me. I wanted to know what kind of law he
Point
practices.
of order, Miss Shelley,
that might
point of
answer Miss
order. Miss
Shelley's-
Shelley asked you a question, Mr. Twig.
I
That,
was trying to help get
as
Ms.
a
Shelley's
chair,
question answered.
that was very rude and disrespectful. She asked you a question, and you didn't answer her question, and then you went to Miss Gillespie.
Well, we did not have an
Because he doesn't
attorney.
know. He doesn't have any answers. He doesn't know what Title IX or Title VI are.
We did not have an attorney 2 days ago. We have one yesterday and this evening. So let's just move forward with that. Regarding the closed meeting,
Mr. Twigs, I'm
Miss,
sorry. Mr.
Bowler-
Twigs, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to appeal that decision for for hiring an attorney. So at this point, you get to, yes, according to Robert's rule, there is a appeal. I can appeal your decision as a chair. And according to Robert's rules, I have to stand and make that announcement regardless of what's going on right now. So,
Okay, the
so there is
appeals.
debate on the floor at this moment. There
What's
is
that?
debate. When you appeal a decision from the chair, that means we are going against the decision as
Okay, well, 10 minutes for the entire discussion
you.
then? What do you think?
that is fine. We need to have a
Okay.
discussion.
So
And you
who-
get 2 times to speak and answer Ms. Shelley's question.
Well, I already answered her question.
But
Do you have
according
something
to
add?
Robert's rule, you get 2 times to speak. Everyone else get 1 time to speak. Because we are appealing the decision from you.
But if we're limiting the entire discussion to 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, that's totally up to you. But right now, what I'm saying is that every member on this board gets an opportunity to speak. And you
Fine.
get twice to speak because we're
Okay.
appealing the decision.
Well,
for hiring this
since
attorney.
the appeal, I'm yielding my time at the moment to anybody who has something to add.
Mr. Twig, I asked you a question and you're not answering it.
I responded.
No, you didn't.
Okay. Well, that's,
Well, 'cause
thank
don't-
you for your
can't okay.
opinion. Do you have
Mr. Twigg,
anything else?
She's appealing it because you can't answer my question.
Again, the final authority in judging whether the rules have been violated in terms of hiring our attorney, it's to the group, not you, Mr. Chairman, at this point.
Anybody else have anything to
Yes.
add?
In regards to
Ms.
the
Cole.
appeal for hiring an
Yeah,
attorney,
we're talking appeal only, and
are-
then we're going into closed session.
we are a 7-member school board, and we are here to make decisions related to a school division, the hiring of a superintendent, or negotiating a superintendent's contract is entirely a school law matter. Education law needs to be known to be able to understand how a contract for a superintendent of a school division should be properly written. It's not a general contract. It is specific. There are specific contract provisions that we need to know that we can be counseled on for our protection as a board, since the superintendent is someone that we hire, that we actually have counsel that can counsel us adequately and appropriately so that we make the best decisions in regards to the contract and in regards to any negotiations. And so that you have the best information, you and Ms. Gillespie as the negotiators, of how this contract is supposed to be written to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and not Mr. Taylor. Our school attorney our school board attorney is for the board and not for the benefit of any candidate that we would be giving a contract to. And it is one thing to have a rogue attorney come to a closed meeting inappropriately to terminate a contract, as was done in January by you, but to create a new contract for a superintendent without someone, a counsel who can actually make sure that we are being safe and prudent in those contract provisions is unfathomable. And that you don't take this. Don't do that to me. I don't need you to count me down. Okay?
Oh,
I'm
count you up.
talking.
We're up
Are
to-
you listening?
We're up to
Rather
4
than
minutes on the
okay,
10-minute
look,
discussion.
and I'm going to take as much time as I need.
Please.
Because obviously,
Just so you're aware.
you and Ms. Gillespie, as chair and vice chair, don't take this seriously. If you took it seriously, you wouldn't rush a contract decision for superintendent when we don't have a lawyer. We don't have the time to get legal counsel that has school law background. It's not necessary. Like I said before, this is not an emergency, and especially when we cannot, in a timely fashion, we're basically pressed to get whoever could be available. Because I know that there are legal counsel that we could have reached out to on the VAST list. There are legal counsel that have this experience, but they weren't able to be available at such a short notice. I mean, really, within a day, you're trying to call around legal counsel, and basically this is the best that you could get for the time period. That is not prudent as a school board member to force a counsel who is inexperienced in what we're needing to be done. And he thinks, and like Ms. Shelley said, no offense to you, because you admitted, and thank you for admitting that you do not have school law experience. It has been asked of staff whose job responsibility it is not to retain a lawyer. It's not their responsibility to find a lawyer, the person that was asked to get a lawyer. And then we get someone who is available. Just like we're just getting someone who Mr. Twig wants to be the superintendent of our division. This is not the way that any business does business.
Oh,
Since you
yes,
want a
it
business
is.
person, and this is definitely not the way that we should be doing running the operations of a school division or of our school board. And the board members who are sitting up here, it does not take a lot of intelligence or experience or knowledge or common sense to know what is right.
Okay, well,
And to
thank
and to
you.
know that this is not right and that we actually need, because there is no one on this board that has contracts experience in law that can actually inform this contract in a way that any of us should be comfortable that we would be protected as a board in issuing a contract to someone. I mean, again, I am, deathly concerned that there is still a desire for 4 members still to hire this person, considering the information that we got today. I mean, if that's the case, then for those members of this board that are still desiring to move forward, you are being deathly negligent of our students and our school division.
Thank you. Since she's taken 12 minutes of our 10 minutes of discussion, which is fine, Mr. Attorney, would you care to stand up to the podium and just feel free to address, or you could address from there if you'd like. Oh, podium.
We're not done to.
Podium is the
And,
request.
and we're not done with the discussion, and if he does discuss Mr. Twig, he's going to have to be at a microphone.
Then before he comes, Dr. Daniels, what else do you have to say? I mean, you
We're-
agreed to allow this to happen
Right.
at 10 minutes.
We're-
She
we're-
expressed things rather
So we do have to
plainly.
take a vote, Mr. Twig. So
On
does
the
anyone else want to have
appeal.
does anyone have to have a discussion on this appeal?
well.
Do you have an
just
opportunity?
had 12 minutes of 10.
Mr. Twiggs, it says each member has an opportunity to speak. So does anyone else on this board have
can that
something to say? Okay.
I actually had a question, but okay. No, it's okay,
All right,
Miss Shelley. I'll be
Miss Shelley,
respectful.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I am going to let Mrs. Gillespie go before me, because I have to pull it back up on my phone.
Of course. Ms. Gillespie.
It's okay. We can go ahead and hear from the attorney, and I'll wait.
Okay, Mr. Attorney,
Good evening,
thank you
everyone.
for being here to help us in
Not
these
not a
times,
problem.
dire straits, et cetera, but please speak to us.
I'm sorry, Mr. Twiggs, we're debating on whether or not you had the authority to hire the attorney, so I'm a little confused. During the debate, why are we having him discuss
He's
this at
hired,
this
and
point?
he was asked
But we're in an
several
appeal.
questions indirectly.
But Mr. Chairman, we are on an appeal right now.
Okay,
we are
but
removing
the
the decision
appeal
from you at this
correlates
point.
with an existing condition.
Right, but we are on appeal right now as board members. This is what Robert's
So
rule says.
you don't want to hear from him.
Not at this point,
What point do you want to hear
after
from
we
him?
have moved forward on
With-
our decision on whether or not
After
we're
we've
going to
chosen an
sustain
appeal?
your appeal.
No way. All
No,
right.
no, no, Mr. Twiggs, according to Robert's Rules of Order, there's no need to hear from, we're in a debate right now. We're on an appeal right now.
Okay, we're in a debate. All right.
So, Mr. Twig,
Ms. Shelley,
thank you. So policy,
2 minutes, please.
so policy BCG. It's titled School Attorney. School Board Legal Counsel, the board shall employ an attorney or attorneys as necessary to serve the board's legal counsel and representative in matters requiring legal services. The attorney, upon request by the school board, may attend meetings of the board and its committees. The school board shall establish protocols for channeling staff requests for legal advice from the board's legal counsel. Shall employ the board. I would say this would be a necessary reason to have an attorney, but yet, again, he has not been hired by the board. Whatever Mr. Twigg is talking about for purchasing, an attorney is a little different.
No,
because
it's
if
not.
Mr. Twigg, why do you
Be
need to interrupt
factual
Mr.
if you're going
Twigg?
to
I
speak. That's all
am
anybody
speaking.
asks.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I request when a
Please.
board member does have the floor that any other board member refrains from making comments while that member is speaking, please.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you, Mr.
Abusmal.
Done. Please finish.
So, he is the board's attorney. So, out of transparency that some of these people up here ran on, it should be very important that we do have transparency, and the board selects the attorney in an open meeting, not behind closed doors. Now I'm done, Mr. Twigg.
Ms. Gillespie.
I'll yield my time to the attorney. That way he can answer some of the questions that have been asked up here to
Great, and
add
then
for
we can move
clarification
forward.
for us.
Thank you. Go, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Whit Robinson. I was asked to come in on a quick emergency basis, essentially to deal with this contract. I understand there's a lot of issues associated with this. I understand there's a lot of background associated with this. I'm not here to discuss any of that. That's not what I'm here for. As far as, and you're correct, I wouldn't begin to litigate or advise you on Title IX. That's not something that I do. However, I've spent 2 decades being a government attorney. I've been involved with the Local Government Attorneys Association for about that same amount of time. I have worked for 2 decades on contracts, on personnel issues. I've been a part of the negotiation of hiring town attorneys for nearly 2 decades. I'm well aware of a number of the issues associated with hiring somebody. That's what I'm here for. I'm also well-versed in land use, personnel matters, a whole host of other issues as it relates to governments. There are areas of the law when it comes to education I don't know, and I wouldn't begin to say that I do. In this particular area, I do have an expertise. I have an expertise as general counsel for a locality, and I'm happy to give advice as it relates to that. I certainly would not stand here and begin to give you advice about disciplinary matters. I would defer to somebody else with that kind of background. And I've done that for 2 decades, where if I don't know a particular area, you can't be a master. It's jack of all trades, master of none. I cannot be a specialist in every area, and no government attorney can be. That's why you hire outside counsel for a number of items. That's why you have experts in those fields to be able to go to, and that's who I would normally defer to. In this particular area, I do know contract law when it comes to hiring individuals. I've been in those debates before. I've negotiated them and have negotiated them well. That being said, that's primarily what I'm working with you all on at this particular juncture. And so therefore, I feel comfortable advising you on those particular items. As far as the contract goes, without getting into the specifics, it's primarily based upon the previous one. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. There are terms that you all as a body would need to be able to vote on. Those items are policy matters, not legal matters. I certainly would review them in relation to the school board appointment statute, which I reviewed and gone through to make sure that they're in accordance. That being said, I'm happy to answer those questions that you have for me. And again, thank you very much. I do not take anything personally. I've got a pretty thick skin after having done this kind of work for 20 years.
Thank you very much for the brilliant summary.
Mr.
A
Twigg, I
necessary
didn't answer
summary.
the question that I asked just so that we could approve the agenda, because we haven't done that yet. May I?
We still haven't.
Oh, are we still in,
We're
oh, that's
still-
right, we're
yes.
still in that debate.
Yes. So I'm going to ask the question. So do we have any other members on the board that want to address this appeal? Okay, so then I have to ask this question. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? It requires a majority vote in the negative to overturn the chair's ruling for hiring a attorney.
Majority or two-thirds?
Am I excused from the podium?
Yes,
Listening
please,
to that question? Thank you.
Can I call a point of order, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just to
order.
to get my ducks in a row before moving forward. We have done the Pledge of Allegiance, which comes after approving and adopting the agenda. I understand your appeal is on the floor.
Yes. Nothing else happens until the appeal is done.
Okay, well, the chair listed policy of how the finance and the chair can hire legal under 5, and you, Dr. Daniels and Ms. Shelley, I'm not saying either one of you is right or wrong, but as a school board member with absolutely no law experience, I don't feel comfortable taking the advice of any board member at this time. I think we need to look into this. I don't think Mr. Twigg said something, and then you guys said something, and as a board member myself with no legal expertise, I do not feel comfortable voting either way on this one.
What are you voting for? This is in Robert's Rules of Order, Mr.
The
Busmo.
appeal.
This is a
You're-
policy.
you're
We
the way-
adopted the Robert's Rules of Order, so this is a Robert's Rules of Order.
What does that have to do with anything I just said, Dr. Daniels?
I thought you were talking about the appeal. Do you know what the appeal is?
Absolutely, yeah, I'm following.
Okay, it's in the Robert's Rules of Order. So because we have a policy that we adopt the Robert's Rules of Order.
I'm telling you how I feel about
Oh,
your
no,
appeal,
that's fine. I
Dr.
was
It's
just
not
telling you that
rocket
it's from
science,
the
Dr.
Robert's Rules
Daniels.
of Order.
Let's not dance in circles.
Okay,
Okay, please.
We're not going in circles, Mr.
You-
Busmo.
Okay, I said something, and
I was
I
just
was very
explaining-
clear with
was
what I
just-
said. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to analyze what I said, Dr. Daniels.
Mr.
please.
Mr. Busmo, please don't go there with me. So, again, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? If you do not want to vote for this, then guess what? You can abstain, right? Let's do that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Busmo. Thank you.
So the chair has to make a decision on the appeal.
Did I read the Robert's Rules? Again, it should,
Okay,
So,
I call
so
the question.
just,
Question on the appeal.
questions called.
Miss, Dr. Daniels, just so we understand,
Yes.
voting in the affirmative would be voting against the selection of this attorney.
so because the Mr. Chairman has hired this attorney, according to what has been, and that's the reason I brought it up, because there were some contentious debates up here, and I wanted to make sure that the board understood or had an opportunity to speak. So it says, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? It requires a majority vote in the negative to overturn the chair's ruling.
Rule first.
So,
Oh, she appealed.
She is
You don't get a
she is
vote, Mr.
appealing your
Chairman.
action.
So-
She is appealing your action for hiring legal team,
can
Mr.
I,
Chair.
without a
Can
board
I,
approval.
Can I
Okay,
have
so
a
there's an
discussion?
appeal on the
Can I
floor.
have a discussion?
We got a
Can I
point
have
of discussion with Ms. Phelps.
Can I have a discussion here?
Yes.
So, we're elected school
question was
board members
called.
up here.
The question was
We're
called already.
elected school board members up here.
Ms. Gillespie called the question, so there's no more discussion.
I'm in discussion. So we're elected school board members up
Well,
here.
point of order.
And we
your
have
Ms.
Ms.
fellow board
Bowler.
member
Please
called
hear
the
Ms.
question.
Phelps. Please hear
And
Ms. Phelps.
we
The
have
point
Ms.
of order.
Bowler.
There's
So,
no more discussion because the question was called.
I didn't get a chance. I was waiting for everybody
Well,
else to
well,
speak.
you should have
so
done that. They asked multiple times.
I was waiting
Okay.
for her to finish speaking.
Okay,
I'm
well,
giving-
So
your
here's-
chair, of course,
I'm
is going to
giving-
So
Ms.
here
Phelps the
is,
floor.
here's my discussion. I've been sitting up here listening, and we are elected school board members up here. And I would refer this appeal to have Ms. Bowler, who's our secretary of the board, take over this Robert's Rules of Order and this appeal that's here. She is our secretary of the board. We're school board members up here. We're not the secretary of the board to go along with Robert's Rules of Orders and to create it up here. So that would be my
Thank you.
That's fine.
discussion.
That's fine.
So if we could have Ms.
Appreciate it.
Bowler, that would be great. Another thing, so the attorney is not on the agenda to discuss. So that would be another thing. If you could look at Ms. Bowler, if we're discussing the attorney right now, if that has to do with an appeal, because it's not on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman did make mention of it, so that's the only reason I brought it up, because he did mention it, and you're right, Ms. Phelps. I did think about that as he was talking about the attorney, because that is not part of the agenda. So thank you for pointing that out. So if we want to wait, that's fine. That means the attorney will not be able to, because we're still in appeal. So we have to wait.
So
it's up to you
I
guys.
I think the appeal stands.
Yes. So I'm going to make a move to go into closed session. I'm going to make a motion
Miss-
and a move to go
There
into
is
closed
already
session.
an appeal on the floor. You
appeal.
can't.
Yes, you can.
Dr. Daniels,
I'd like
can
to make
you,
a move,
show
unless we have a
Ms.
secretary of the
Bowler?
board.
We
I
have already,
have
Ms.
discussion.
She's a clerk.
Phelps, we already have a motion to go into closed session. We were in discussion. What started this discussion?
And I'll move to go.
Well, we've already got a motion. We already
Right.
have a motion. We were in discussion. Mr. Twig, point of order. What caused this whole thing is because I said that the motion to go into closed session is not the appropriate motion. It started because I asked if our attorney could tell us
Understood.
the proper motion. You told me I could not ask the attorney a question. So with that, and then we went into the discussion, and then Dr. Daniels has put the appeal forward. We are still in the appeal. We
Right.
have a vote, we have a motion on the table, and the appeal supersedes the other motion. Before we can go into closed session, we have to close out the appeal.
Fine. So, do you have anything to add, Ms. Bowler, before we vote on the appeal? Oh, wait, Ms. Phelps did
I
ask a
asked her if
question.
she could step in as the parliamentarian and not the school board member.
Mr. Chair, I don't
Yes.
believe we have a motion on the floor to go into closed meeting. We have a motion to appeal your
Appeal.
decision to
Yes.
hire legal counsel.
Correct.
That is the
I agree
motion on
with
the
that.
floor. It was
Okay,
moved by Dr. Daniels and seconded by Ms. Cole.
Thank you. So, with that, let's vote on the appeal.
I'm not,
You
Mr. Chairman,
concur
can you
with that?
vote? I'm not, Ms.
We did not vote. We have to vote.
I'm talking
You
about
cannot vote.
Since it's an appeal from your decision, I don't think you can vote.
I'd like to have Ms. Bowler opine on that, please.
I'm open to a recess, Ms. Phelps, if that's what you would like to take.
Okay, we're in recess for 5 minutes till we can straighten out the vote for Peel. Okay, anybody want to come out of recess? All right, we're out of recess.
So, back to discussion to Ms. Bowler. So since it wasn't on the agenda, the appeal, then it takes, does it have to be on the agenda? And for an appeal?
It may be
Yes.
germane this evening because we're talking about legal counsel providing a contract. And so therefore, the appeal is pertinent to the business at hand this evening. It requires a majority vote in the negative, and the chair is allowed to vote.
A majority vote in the negative would allow us to,
To
Yeah.
overturn the appeal, to not accept the appeal,
okay,
the question that's on the floor.
and the chair can vote.
Yes.
So if you do not accept the appeal,
I'm sorry,
You're voting-
just for clarification, it's not the appeal, it is the chair's ruling, based on what he said he hired an attorney, so we are taking that decision and asking for the board members to overturn that decision.
So I have a question. So I just want to get a point of clarification here. That way I know from me how I need to vote, because I'm a little confused right now. So you're voting yes if you want to keep the appeal, no if you don't agree with the appeal.
That's
Is that what you're
correct.
saying?
It's the decision of the decision that the chair has made that he hired the attorney. So it's not it's not really the appeal per se, it's the decision that the chair has made. So that is the question.
so are we
Whether,
agreeing,
should a decision of the chair be sustained?
are we keeping, yes, if we're keeping the decision, a no if you want to go down the appeal trail?
Vote in the negative to overturn the chair's ruling that he has single-handedly hired an attorney.
Ms. Bowler, can you, since you are the secretary of the board,
But
I'm
it's my
hearing
appeal.
conflicting up here, so
It's my
can you
appeal.
have that, put some clarity up
It's
here
my
from?
We have an
from-
appeal on the floor.
From yourself, so can you give us clarity on what is actually taking place?
You're funny.
There is a motion on the floor to appeal the ruling of the chair hiring legal counsel.
The appeal
It
or
was
to
seconded by Ms. Cole. The motion was made by Dr. Daniels. So the question on the floor is whether or not you agree with the question of whether or not Mr. Twigg had the authority to hire legal counsel, temporary legal counsel,
Do you agree with?
with the decision.
Okay.
with-
Do you agree with the chair's decision to have hired the guy yesterday, even though it's as legal as heck from financial aspects, but we're not deciding on that at this moment?
Correct.
Mr. Boone?
So, Ms. Bowler, you had a board member bring up the fact that we can't bring up this appeal because it's not on the agenda. Your explanation was, again, I'm sorry.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
You brought up, and one board member brought up that this appeal can be, is invalid because of something that's not on the agenda. What was your response to that?
I believe it's germane this evening because you're considering a contract.
We are not
and-
considering a contract for legal, though. We are considering a contract for superintendent.
Correct, but you're considering a contract that required legal counsel, and therefore it's germane to this discussion this evening.
And, Mr. Chair, if I can ask a
Please.
question. So we vote yes if we agree with the chair's decision, and no if we don't agree with the chair's decision, correct?
No, if you
No, it's
agree
the
with the
opposite.
appeal.
It's the opposite. You vote yes if you agree
With the appeal.
With the appeal.
with the appeal, and no if you agree with the chair's decision.
Okay.
It's a
thank you.
negative vote,
All
a
right.
majority
Let's
negative
get our
vote.
screen. We've been taught. Mr. Boozmal?
So, could I would ask that Dr. Daniels repeats her motion?
The motion is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? And we've already said what that decision is. I can finish reading what else we need to do so we can understand what exactly we need to do. It requires.
I think it's
I
I'd
can
like to
speak,
hear
Ms.
from
Ms. Phelps. I can still speak. I'm trying to help you guys.
So I understand, but we have a secretary and a clerk of the board.
But I'm the one that brought it forth.
We're
so it
elected
has to come.
officials, so I'd like to, if
I
you
brought it
have
forth,
any
Ms. Phelps.
procedural wise. I'm just trying to help you
Okay.
out.
Okay,
So, Dr. Daniels, you want to elaborate on something?
yes.
Please do.
Okay. According to Robert's rule, it requires a majority vote in the negative to overturn the chair's ruling. His ruling is that he hired the attorney. That's the ruling. If you want to overturn it, it has to be a vote in the negative.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think that's right. I think it's vote yes if you want to keep moving. Vote yes if you want to keep moving forward, and no if you want to accept her appeal.
Okay, guys, vote every way you want, because whatever,
That is-
if you
that
mess
is
it up, it's okay. I'm just going to leave it alone. I won't say anything else.
Okay, so Ms. Bowler, can you elaborate for more clarification? Just to make sure, because we're going on other tangents. So I want to be certain that I'm hearing it from the clerk of the board that is up here for us, for all of us together, so.
That is correct. So a majority vote is required in the negative to reverse the ruling of the chair. And
So
the
you have
ruling
to
of the chair was hiring legal counsel.
so vote yes if you want to keep moving forward, or no if you want to acknowledge the appeal.
Correct.
Okay.
What are we, third graders?
Yeah, so it
My
is
goodness.
A negative,
All right.
a negative vote is
Can we get
required
the
to
voting
overturn.
screen, please?
Required to overturn the ruling. A majority vote in the negative is required to overturn the ruling of the chair, which is the hiring of legal counsel.
So you need 4 no's
if-
to
if
accept her
you-
appeal.
Uphold the chair's ruling, you would vote yes. If you want to overturn it, you would vote no.
Yes.
All right, we're past that. Motion carries 4-3. Ms. Baller, will you kindly read us into closed session?
Point of order, Mr. Twig. I have asked that we get information on this motion. I told you, I believe this is the incorrect motion to go into a contract negotiation. Just like last night was absolutely the wrong motion that was made.
Well, okay. Your point is heard and acknowledged, and you are wrong. And this has been vetted by plenty of people over the last week, and of course, times past. So we are sticking with that. We are going to vote under this directive to go into closed session. But Ms. Baller, will you please read us into closed
Mr.
session?
Chair, I'm intrigued to what policy number Ms. Shelley thinks. If she doesn't believe this is the right one, what do you think is the right one, Ms. Shelley? Just to,
I'm
Okay.
not saying, I think.
or what
it-
code, Virginia code, we should go in under?
I have to wait for permission from the chairman to speak.
Okay, Ms. Baller, read us into closed session, please.
Resolved that the board conduct a closed meeting for the
Ms.
following
Shelley
purposes.
has a question. Mr. Abusmal had a question that needed to be answered because Ms. Shelley's question still has not been answered.
Well, then answer his question, please.
Oh, thank you for recognizing me. What was your question, Mr. Abusmal?
Since you believe this is not the correct code, which code should we be going
No,
to closed session?
I think this is the correct code.
Uh-huh.
I absolutely, but I think it's the incorrect motion.
Incorrect motion.
Just because you have the correct code, you still have to have a correct motion. And this motion does not mention anything about a contract specific to a superintendent. And Mr. Twigg, your heavy breathing is not helping matters. If anyone remembers that when we had a discussion about, just last month, about Mr. Gimbel's salary change, we had to have a motion that was specific to the superintendent's salary. Because when we went into closed session with just this basic motion, the attorney in the back told us we were not allowed to talk about the contract. So, I'm just trying to keep us legal here, folks, and I'm going to just announce this to the audience. If they don't change it and it's still in a legal closed session, I'm going to tell the people, I'm still going to go back there because I need to know what they're putting on Mark Taylor's contract. So I'm telling you flat out, I'm not going in there because I want to go in there. I'm going in there to try to protect this school division.
Well, just like last night, it was the correct read-in, and tonight
Mr.
we're
Twigg,
following
last night's
through.
was not, and I've got an opinion with the FOIA council coming.
Ms. Baller, will you read us into closed session?
Mr. Twiggs, I'm sorry. I just have a point of parliamentary inquiry. You cannot punch me, you cannot hit me down. You cannot gavel when there's a point of inquiry or parliamentary inquiry on the floor, Mr. Twiggs. So did we vote on the motion, on the agenda already?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay, Ms. Baller.
Resolved that the board conduct a closed meeting for the following purposes: discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any specific public body, including considering a draft contract for the superintendent, as permitted by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. I did, yes. This is just the code section that I read. I added the specificity. That's
Mi-
just the agenda item.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bowler, could you read that one more time, please?
Resolved that the board conduct a closed meeting for the following purposes: discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body, to include discussing a draft contract for the superintendent appointee, as permitted by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia.
Did you say draft
Thank you.
a
Do I hear a
contract?
motion?
It's a draft contract until you approve it.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll
Motion
second.
by Ms. Phelps, enter into closed session, second by Ms. Gillespie. Everybody vote. Uh, 5-2, we're in closed session. Stand by.